Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Corner Späti. This is Kieran, just coming in a bit advance here to tell you another one of these trigger warnings. As kind of promised, I think many people might have heard we were going to talk about racialized police violence in Europe. And we do talk about it in detail. I think we give it the topic, the respect it deserves. We do crack some jokes about unrelated things and the way we usually do to try and keep this a bit more light and entertaining, but we also do describe some of these cases in detail, and naturally they are horrific. If you are like a lot of us on the podcast and have been glued to Twitter and a lot of other social media watching the footage come in from the States and you can't quite handle that, we totally understand if you have to give this episode a miss. If you want to stick around though, hope you enjoy. Thanks.
If you call yourself a populist, but if you don't support this genuinely populist uprising, you may be a reactionary. There's nothing but this.
All right, keep going.
If you were a leftist engaging in electoralism by dedicating yourself to Bernie Sanders' campaign but dismiss the revolutionary potential of these uprisings, you may be a class reductionist.
Oh, I see. It's different every time. All right, I'm intrigued.
If your sole purpose is as a false idol to capture and defuse potentially revolutionary forces, you may be Barack Obama.
Get him. Get his ass.
Hey. Welcome to your weekly Corner Späti. We have the full gang here. Myself, Nick, joined by Rob.
Hello.
Kieran.
Hey.
And Yulia.
Hi.
And, I guess just, no jibber jabber, no bullshit. We're talking about Europe, as always.
We got a lot to cover.
Yeah, Europe, with everything going on in the United States, obviously, everyone's looking at the U.S. Kind of racist, kind of sus. Europe, would it surprise you that it's also racist and very sus?
Let's talk about the mother of racism.
Yeah.
It's Europe.
Look, this is what every Atlanticist wanted. They're like, all right, we are going to be Greece to America's Roman Empire. So guess who started the pedophilia of the 21st century? Oh, no, it's also pedophilia.
Well, it's, the U.S. is like, like George Bush or something. And then like his mom, like Barbara Bush, you're like, well, she can't be that bad. And then you hear her talk or anything and you're like, oh no.
Oh, shit.
This old woman she's old, but oh no.
I keep forgetting which member of the royal family it is, but there is a member of the royal family that they hide away for being too racist. I think she has a collection of like racist brooches.
What?
Yeah.
What's the brooch? Sorry. Brosche?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. We have the same word for it.
Yeah.
Brooch.
But you wonder what a person who's like too racist for the royal family is like.
Wow. You gotta be extra racist.
I'm just wondering, is it like natural racism or is it inbred racism that just like throughout the years have just like deteriorated their brain because they're like,
There's something like inbred racism.
No. That like they're significantly more racist through inbreeding.
Interesting theory.
Yeah.
Like maybe it like I don't know maybe the racism lobe of their brain is like 4 times.
It's
the
just like being
size.
pushed against the side of their skull. And
Exactly.
They're like a pug, and it's just making them very hard to like not be racist.
Yeah, they can't breathe properly, but sure they have fucking opinions about every single racial category in Europe.
We have to look into the writings of the Habsburgs and. So
for those who don't know, most of our listeners probably do. There have been protests around the world in solidarity with those protests going on in the U.S. In support of George Floyd, but also I think crucially doing that while also addressing racism. Oftentimes that hasn't been if the George Floyd protests in the U.S. are like a kind of taking things up a level in the U.S. Maybe you could say around for the rest of the world and many other countries, it's doing that same. It's making a lot of them a national conversation. Whereas I don't know, maybe in Germany it's been kind of regional. Each city has had a case, and then they talk about it. It's definitely a conduit for new kinds of organization.
Yeah, this is something I've been kind of surprised about. Like, so in general, when this first happened, I think Nick was the first to find it and like drag it on Twitter. There was someone on like Twitter who was just like, "I've just never seen racism in Europe."
German tennis player. I forget his name.
Right.
Who was from who's ethnically Serbian? Like, how have you not experienced racism? I'm just like, never mind.
Yeah, but so like. I'm happy to see that thought is not too prominent, but like I think compared to when like Ferguson happened, it was like way more prominent than it is now. Whereas I feel like all the like Black Lives Matter solidarity protests that are happening are also addressing like local and national issues, or at least a lot of them are. I feel like when Ferguson happened, it was just like, this is an American problem that needs to be fixed. Boo U.S. Embassy. We are fine. But there's probably a lot of people out there. Actually, I'd say a lot of Americans, like especially white Americans, who probably think Europe has solved this in some way.
Yeah. Especially about Germany, a lot of people think somehow that we don't.
Yeah,
we don't do racism.
Angela Merkel she's a slay queen, so of course she's slayed the racism.
The sad thing is there was stuff about like videos of the protests going on and announcing the protests here in Berlin, and I kind of like took a screen recording of all the answers. And it was an article, I think, by Tagesspiegel or something. I don't remember. It was on Facebook, and people are saying like, "Yeah, but why do we always look over to the Atlantic and like apply this stuff here? Like, we don't have a problem with racism."
Germany, where you hit, where I think we've discussed in the show before.
I know what it was. It was about the rename. Sorry, it was about the renaming of the Mohrenstraße in Berlin. Sorry for saying that. That's still the name of the street.
Carrot Street.
The Carrot Street. Actually, they put like an umlaut a lot of the times over it. But they wanted to rename it into like George Floyd Street or something like that, as far as I know, in Berlin, or like something like that. And yeah, it's really weird because the answers were something like, I don't. For me, it's not bad if someone calls me Kalkleiste. So Kalk is
what?
Kalk.
Is that the German version of cracker?
Yeah.
That's a very telling on yourself answer.
Yeah.
Like
what does that directly translate as?
And Kalkleiste, kalk is the stuff that is in water.
Calcium buildup.
Yeah. And Leiste is
kind of fire.
And Leiste.
Yo, I would start calling every white person that. That's sick.
Yes, do it. But that is really weird because like his answer.
Wait. No. He says that, but fucking call him Kartoffel, and he'll have fucking words to say.
No, he said then he would flirtatiously answer, "Oh, well, you cute little, you delicious little brownie," or something like that. Here we go. And then everyone would laugh. And then they would be all happy together because there's no racism.
But I'm racist.
Yes, exactly.
I love when the sexual pathology comes into it. That's always great.
And people are saying like, "Oh, nobody has a problem with the name of the street. I don't have a problem with the name of the street." Yeah, because you're white.
Yeah, it says like I don't know, insert generic fucking German name.
Yeah. Just so much on the reactions, so I'm sorry.
No, I'm just, the thing that then I always just think is like, because this is like very much in like the liberal psyche of that Germany hit critical mass of racism, that then you just can't have racism after it, after World War II and whatnot, like completely devoid of the history of that. Then like Germany was like pieced together out of like the remnants of like.
Some people seem to think that it was like a you chart racism over the time, and then it's just like a sudden cliff drop rather than at least like a descent. Like it's definitely better than it was in those times, but it's not exactly zero.
Yeah.
It's like with phobia, like in psychology, you say the fear can only go to a 10. After that, it goes back down. So with phobia, saying xenophobia in Germany, it reached a 10.
Yes. Right now it's about like a 7.
Yeah. So how xenophobic do you feel today?
I always just one last thing on the U.S. image of racism abroad, because I think you always need to clarify that there's no like coherent through line. I mean, like like the rest of the world appears to a lot of Americans as like kind of like those floaters in your eye when you like kind of blink and they're drifting across, like, oh, look at that, and then it disappears again. Like it's not a stable
where you like you press your hands on your eyes way too hard and then let them go.
Exactly. And so it's not something that like you can say like this is the way they always feel. But I think Germany is an interesting case because so much of you learn so much about Germany and the Holocaust in the U.S. in order to be like, and that's why the U.S. military should always intervene abroad to do what, to save the world. And if Germany didn't, and part of that, or usually implicit in that, is that Germany doesn't have any problems anymore. We fixed them. Because if they got problems again, then it's like, well, then that intervention, World War II didn't really do anything. So maybe you can't solve racism with the U.S. military.
Speaking of which, did you see that they pulled out a bunch of U.S. troops of Germany today? Trump just pulled out
I saw that as well.
troops
Really?
of Germany.
Yeah.
He's cutting all the ties. Like he fucked over South Korea recently as well with military.
Bye.
He
needs it.
I love it.
He needs it in the country.
No, I fucking love it too, because like it kind of proves this like self-fulfilling prophecy of that then like NATO is just like US influence is falling apart, and liberals will put to it because they're sad about it, like it's Trump who's doing it. And I really like how Trump's an accelerationist about this, because it's cool. Like it genuinely is good that then like US global influence is rapidly deteriorating even faster than it was already, because like fucking bankrupting yourself in fucking a 2-decade-long war wasn't doing that enough to begin with.
Yeah.
My stance though is that Joe Biden is the accelerationist candidate, and that this will become more and more clear as the year goes on.
Interesting.
It's just that he has to, because we'll get to like a point where his brain doesn't work anymore, so he has to like get as much done as he possibly can before like he has enough brain cells functioning, or what?
I just think everyone will look at him and be like, no one's in charge here. We can do whatever we want.
Oh, that's like Russia in the 90s.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, I've said this before. No, the USA, like there is 2 paths you can go down to when you like when you're no longer a superpower, that we have 2 historical examples of, which is like Europe post World War II. The European powers are over. Post-war consensus, a little bit of like, here's some like scraps workers so you don't like do the revolution. Or 90s Russia.
Yes, we do. 90s Russia.
Yeah. English dash cam videos. That's all I want.
All right.
Yeah. To that point, I think we're basically going to be talking about a bunch of examples of racialized police violence in Europe to kind of highlight that Europe is not good.
We can't cover everything.
God,
No.
Well, actually, we have a list. I don't know how much of this we'll actually get to.
Yeah.
To be determined.
We have to kind of decide.
This will be an ongoing project here
Yeah.
at Corner Späti
I think
over the next weeks and months.
I mean,
Project
Germany,
Racism.
project Document European.
Germany alone would need so much, like when you
Yeah.
go with all that.
Project
Germany is
Love
like a fucking 4-arc episode, like a 4-part arc.
Yes.
We got a Netflix miniseries of how bad Germany is. No, so yes, to Rob's point, we will probably take a lot of these cases or countries as their own episode at some point in the future. Probably have guests on to talk about particular situations. I think we're also, because it would require, again, its own or multiple episodes, we'll probably only like gloss over examples of police violence towards Roma, Sinti, and travelers. That's like a whole other field. That's like a white noise constantly in the background of Europe, of just like continuously happening. Yeah. There's also some stuff with the Sami. I need to do more research about that. But we do have some countries for you today. We will be talking about instances in Ireland, the UK, Germany, France, and a little bit of Sweden and the Netherlands.
Come on down.
Yeah. Because we didn't mention you, does it mean your country's not racist? It's probably really racist. Norway.
Latvia.
Maybe your country's so racist that we just can't do an episode on it.
Yeah.
It physically is impossible.
Google Docs kept crashing.
All the Balkans.
Oh, yeah.
And throughout, I just like to I don't know when we will be able to bring it up on each case, but like just consider the coronavirus pandemic / quarantine George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests in the U.S. as like a symbol, a rallying cry. What kind of that? Let's see. That spark combined with the history of each country is just going to be a constant presence throughout. So all the countries we talk about had quite large protests today, or in the past week, for like around this topic. But yeah, we're going to focus a little bit on each country's history. Just remember that all these protests are right now. This isn't just history we're talking about.
Just today.
Yes, the past few hours.
And like to Yulia's point a little bit, but and I feel like it's happening in like bigger media in like the more mainstream media, like big TV channels. But I do think there is an incentive within European media to say this is an American problem and for there not to be an examination of what happens here. Which is where this kind of like myth comes from. People just didn't spontaneously think that European countries were not racist. That's not how anything works.
Nope.
But I'm happy to say I feel like maybe I'm going mad and maybe I'm just in a different Twitter bubble, but I do feel like these protests that Rob mentioned are also addressing like local and national issues of racism.
Definitely.
And not just focusing only on the States. For sure.
And it's worth pointing out, I mean, whatever the character, whatever they lead to, it's worth mentioning that everywhere, at least in Germany that I've seen, every single protest is far outshot its expected turnout. Yeah. It's way 4 times bigger, 5 times bigger.
Today it was like 16,000 was the number.
I mean, just they changed it to Alexanderplatz just yesterday or the day before. I'm sure connected to this. And this morning I saw that they expected 7,000. Yeah, they at least easily doubled that. Yeah. They expected 7,000 after originally estimating like 1,500.
And it was, I think it was like 16,000 when they like at 2 or something when it started. So there were still like people joining the protests. I saw people everywhere. There were people everywhere.
I saw photos online. Okay, I'll start with my country of origin because it's comparatively a little bit nicer to talk about. So in terms of the protest, I will also say that, yes, this exceeded expectations. Ireland is still, or was when the protest happened, that was last weekend, still under quarantine, pretty strictish lockdown, stricter than Germany. And they were expecting 1,000 people to turn out, and they got 5,000. So that was pretty big. That's a big deal for Dublin, which is a city of like 1 million. Anyway, now we get to talk about Ireland in general and its racism. And again, this is excluding any kind of prejudice by the police towards travellers, which is rampant. We'll have our own episode on that. But I would want to say that there hasn't been any racialized police deaths, or at least none that have made the big picture. I personally don't believe that there isn't any kind of racist abuse from the police. I just don't think it's been measured. I don't think there's been massive studies into it. But I also want to say that compared to the other countries we want to talk about, the Irish police are in no way near as militarized. Ireland, being a neutral country, doesn't have this feedback loop of give the police the old army's toys to terrorize the local populace.
It is worth noting that there are some hate crimes in Ireland against non-white.
So this is the thing. The rate of hate crimes, the numbers I've seen have been towards black people specifically. This is excluding Asian, Middle Eastern. In Ireland is bad. So it's bad to the level that I really don't believe that there couldn't be some sort of thing happening within the police that reflects this. It'd be very hard to imagine that there's a racist public and not a racist police, if you get my meaning.
But it's so funny how that's just kind of so many. It's obviously absurd on its face, but it's just so funny how that is the assumption of so many countries, especially European countries, that are we may have problems, but in the state and the police, and the carriers out of state violence, by their virtue of representing this great nation or father, whatever, it has to be good.
Cool. So I just want to highlight some of the incidents that have happened and some of the things that we kind of should talk about. So just this week, a video went viral of a black Irishman being stopped in his own like housing estate by a Garda, being like, "Where are you going? Where do you live? What are you doing here?" kind of thing. That was videotaped. That was put around. The black Irish community kind of resonated with that, which is why I think while there isn't like the police brutality as such, I do think there's probably a response of like the small things like traffic tickets, random checks, things
Racial
like that.
profiling stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but again, Ireland doesn't measure this super well, so I think it will start to probably now. Then probably one of the biggest incidents that I could find was a hate crime, like Rob said. A African Irish teenager, Tega Agbehere, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, was a victim of an acid attack in Waterford in Ireland. He was thrown acid by Irish teenagers. The incident becomes interesting because the teenagers who did it weren't charged with anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The Gardaí basically.
They were just out there with acid?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
It was like a targeted attack. Like they were
Yeah.
going after him.
Oh.
But like this happened in 2019 and there was a huge scandal because the Gardaí didn't like press any charges other than there's kind of like a teenager misdemeanor thing that you can get, which like is small. It effectively doesn't do anything. At worst, you might get like a month's community service or something
For
like that.
throwing acid at
Yeah,
someone.
exactly.
All right.
People were like, this is maybe a bit severe. They shouldn't be punished the same way someone who steals like a muffin
Yeah.
from Tesco should be
Yes.
like punished. So that's probably a big story. Beyond that, I want to talk about a little bit of the protest and the response. I am relatively proud of Ireland at the moment for the big nature of the response. Like I said, there was like about 5,000 people out in the streets. It's big for Ireland. Not to mention, I've also seen a huge degree of solidarity between like these various different groups that are affected by this, namely like Irish people of color, the refugees and asylum seekers, travelers, LGBT community, the like recently somewhat radicalized feminist community of Ireland as well because of the Eighth Amendment abortion referendum. And so they've all been in solidarity with each other. Like every like black Irish person who's been doing like, you know, clapbacks on Twitter or like Instagram, which is where most of this is happening in the Irish community actually, Instagram stories, do always bring up like the traveller cause, which is something that I feel like could have been very easily overlooked. So yeah, that's pretty great. The campaign is mostly being directed into ending direct provision. We've talked about it on the show before. I can't remember the episode, but it's Ireland's like public-private partnership bullshit, like interning of asylum seekers and refugees. There was a case, I believe it was either 2018 or 2019, where a 10-year-old was deported back to a country he had never lived in because he was born in direct.
10-year-old.
Yes.
What the fuck?
And while I have to be careful with this because of libel laws, but I can do this. Reportedly, allegedly, within the direct provision system, the guards, this is not the Gardaí, the police, but the guards of these like facilities have murmurs of sexual abuse and assault towards people who are within the system. But the rationale for why this isn't a big deal is because people within the system are afraid of critiquing the system because they're basically in waiting line for right of residence in Ireland, and if they push back, they might be deported. So, yes, genuinely proud of Ireland for tackling this. Like, Leo Varadkar had to make a comment about direct provision. It was garbage. He said, oh, they're getting, like, free water and shelter over their heads. And, like, oh, fucking hell. He looked genuinely so fucking slimy when he said it, literally like as if he was sweating. Because it was, like, he was in a suit and it was 14 degrees, and we're Irish.
But it was literally the like, yeah, he's in this car listening to his favorite music. Don't worry, they're fine. Nothing to see here.
He said, even though like, he basically made the comment that it was despicable that people were comparing direct provision to what was happening in the States, because he was like, people genuinely retweeted that comment, being like, their racism bad, our racism good.
Yeah.
So like, fuck him. And no one was really making that comparison. They were just using this moment to, mobilize and talk about an Irish issue.
That's so insidious because it can always, I'm not sure if this is how he meant it, but that's the impression I get, that like it's of a piece with a lot of comments from super cynical mayors in the US as saying, oh, what you're doing isn't really the authentic cause that like black people are doing. You know what I mean? By saying that, oh, like that's not the same. That's an insult to the like
my
to
mom
black
tried to pull that shit the other day of the thing,
Seriously?
like, oh, they're not, like she just did the Martin Luther King thing or whatever, Martin Luther King Jr. And I'm like, yeah, and what fucking happened to him? He got shot and he died.
Yeah.
Like what? Like from just a
so many people saying like, oh yeah, this is not what Martin Luther King would have wanted, and
he literally
like,
endorsed riots. Like that's
Yeah.
the thing that everyone just knows one quote from him. Every at least like American.
Yeah, Leo Varadkar then went on to comment after this, like I believe it was in the same speech in the Dáil, to basically outline horseshoe theory and compared the head of People Before Profit, Richard Boyd Barrett, for wanting to have like free college education and social housing in Ireland to the racist cops in the United States who murder black people.
Wait, what? How?
Yeah, because horseshoe
that
theory.
work?
He doesn't see any difference between the far left and the far right. He literally said that in the Dáil. And he said that they divide people and I don't do that. And everyone then posted the picture of him and his first campaign, which was welfare cheats cheat us all. And it was just him being like, we need to clamp down on people who are falsely claiming the dole.
Oh, the welfare queen.
Yeah, the welfare queen one,
Yeah.
basically.
How did he get elected? Like
he
how
did. Well, if you remember the Irish election episode, he didn't really.
Yeah, true. That is.
That's how.
True.
But I just think it's so clear that just in your examples, Kieran, you have Varadkar, the head of Ireland, like cynically using like identity in this very specific way to divide people.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that like divisions between people and ethnic identities and races aren't very real and have very like tense histories, but like it is like people can work them out together, like you mentioned with the travelers.
Exactly.
Like people are pointing and saying like, hey, like we can be in solidarity and move together.
But-
that's the response from people on the ground, and it's a response from
But
authorities.
politicians love to use it as like something that divides.
Exactly.
In the sense of like, to destroy solidarity. You say,
To
like,
talk
it's
about
like-
races to divide.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's Ireland, which is quite brief, and the kind of response I'm seeing in the media is kind of good. There's been like a push to have like one of the big things that was brought up is that there's basically no like people of color journalists in Ireland, and they were just like, we kind of need to fix this because like Ireland, I think, and in this moment has also now just kind of very aggressively realized that there is a black population in Ireland. As an example, like, I mean, like it is very new that they have like that more of them have voices in Ireland. Like it wasn't a thing. Like most of the like good commentary is coming from like musicians, which great for using their platform, but like that's the only platform that a lot of them have. Like
Has Bono said anything?
Has you written this?
So I'm particularly talking about if anyone wants to follow people on the Irish issue, there's two musicians, one called Loah, Loah, and another one called Fehdah, Fehdah. I'll put in links. Because all this stuff happens on Instagram like stories, which then go away, which makes it really hard to research, guys. But
You have to be on Instagram 24/7.
pretty
I'm sorry.
much. But yeah, follow them. They're great, and they've been very vocal about like racism does happen in Ireland, guys. And people are like, yeah, they probably know what they're talking about. So yeah, Ireland.
What's next?
What's next?
Problem solved.
Problem solved.
Stop racism in Ireland. Next one.
Speaking of racism in Ireland, the UK.
Yay!
Yeah. So again, big protests.
How do we even start on this one?
Yeah, that's a.
So slavery invented in
Colonialism,
scramble for Africa.
capitalism.
I recently had a friend point out to me that the end of the Scramble for Africa, the end of that book is like this one chapter being like, and the future of Africa is Robert Mugabe. I'm like, oh, this was written, this was written in a different time.
Yep.
Anyway, so in the UK, I should mention that there is probably just more cases than we can do justice in this episode.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have 3 that I'm going to bring up this episode. One which happened in 2008. First one I'm going to bring up was a person called Sean Rigg. Sean Rigg was a music producer in I want to say he was big late 80s, early 90s within the UK. And unfortunately, since then, kind of as he faded from the limelight, he also got diagnosed, and the symptoms of this affected him more, of paranoid schizophrenia. And this would result in violent outbursts because of this issue. He was in a kind of social housing for people who suffer from these kind of ailments, and routinely he would have the cops called on him, to which there was a violent response. One night in 2008, when this happened, the violence escalated, and he was brought to Brixton Police Station in London, to which he was then left handcuffed outside of it and not examined by the... I'm not sure what the official title is, but there's basically a doctor on staff in every police station. He wasn't examined until CCTV footage revealed, I think something like 20 minutes later, after being visibly unconscious in the front of the building. So, yeah. That was I feel like the big one.
Video being revealed after the fact that forces people to acknowledge something that they previously ignored. I guess that doesn't know any boundaries. It's not just it's all over the world. Same phenomenon.
Unfortunately, the CCTV footage can't be played on any kind of American DVD players though, without being region unlocked. So
you can only change it 3 times. You know that the logs.
But that's as people have rightly pointed out in the States that this is always happening. It's now there's just video of it, kind of thing, and this is what's happening in 2008. There is cases predating 2008, but this is the one that I feel got a huge, a wider response than previous cases. There was cases in the 90s, but the people who would then go protest it were very niche communities because that news wouldn't travel as much. This got a larger public outcry. Skip ahead to 2015 to a case of a Sheku Bayo, who died in debatable either Kirkcaldy or Fife in Scotland, because he was arrested in Kirkcaldy. He was then hospitalized in Fife. They're close to each other. Oh, sorry. So the issue was very similar to George Floyd. In fact, the remaining family of Bayo was interviewed after the footage of George Floyd came out, being how did this make you feel? And they're always this reminds me of him, because he was in Kirkcaldy, pinned down by an excessive police force. He was called because he was on MDMA, and he was twigging out quite publicly. But then police were called, pinned him to the ground, pepper sprayed him. There was beaten with batons, and he lost consciousness while being pinned down and restrained by the police. He then died in hospital after never regaining consciousness from that point. So, yeah, that's the case there. Again, a lot of this, I think, came to news because of the footage from speed cameras that happened to be nearby, because he was on I think he was arrested on a motorway, I believe. And then the last one I want to bring up is, we don't have a name for this one yet, unfortunately. This happened 31st of May. So
recently.
Very recently. 6 police officers in Lewisham. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's the place name, Lewisham. Pinned down a woman, beat her, all 6 on top of her. Fuck. Yeah, this footage has gone viral. Beyond that, there isn't any news of who she is, what state she is in.
I think I've seen it.
Yeah. So again, this was because we can talk about all these cases that happened in the 90s, 2008, 2015 even. Yeah. And rather than saying this is a once off, we have this, as we'll go into other countries, this perfect confluence of things that happened almost the exact same date as when George Floyd died. So like that can't be like the only way that works out as a coincidence is if it's ever present. Like if this were random occurrences, they couldn't have all happened like within a week of each other unless it's regularly occurring.
Yeah. I think the weird thing with the UK too, because it's always one that then like Americans point out as well of like, oh, look, see, like the only thing you have to do to make your cops better is like, you know, if you just disarm them, then it changes like the relation between people and the police. And that to a degree is like true, but also
because
like,
and you know that's to a degree true because the bullshit reforms,
yeah,
like being offered the 8 can't wait and everything,
yeah.
they don't touch that.
Exactly. Yeah.
They can't touch that because like, I mean, that might actually do something.
Yeah, like what the 8 can't wait thing is just an app is one of the dumbest fucking things because it's like means tested, like not even de-escalation. It's just a like maybe if we just make the cops like warn you before you shoot you, then that's the solution. It's like that it exists.
So they gotta say something and then shoot you.
They do that though in
immediately.
most states. Like that's the thing though. So like what like maybe in like extreme outlier cases that'll like change a state's policy, but
I mean, as people have pointed out on Twitter, like 7 of those 8 were already in place in Minneapolis.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I mean,
Or they're already in place in LA and shit like that too. Which
they probably use that when you're white, like the warning before they shoot. Or I mean,
it's like, oh, we have a white suspect here. All right, we get out the book.
Well,
all right, what are the 8 rules?
like,
Step 1.
how do we handle?
Yeah, but
exactly.
then,
How do we
like,
handle
so-
this?
so this happened-
person's white. What do I do?
this happened to a friend of mine is a firefighter in a certain state. I'm not going to say which one because it gives it away then of that the state's very bad. And they had firefighters function as EMTs or whatever, you know, and you have this idea then of that then like that the cops are going to like in a like so the scenario was that there was a guy with a firearm who was like threatening people, this and that. And just to like put into context that the cops do not give a shit about then the other person that then who is there, like regardless of like even if the person brandished a firearm or not, the cop felt threatened while they all had AR-15s drawn, and his immediate reaction was just to pop him in the head with a .223 round, which the guy lived. And my friend had to fucking like patch his head up for then him to die 2 seconds later.
I love how it's always said like, okay, I know this is like everyone knows it, but like that how like trained police officers,
They're pussies.
are the ones that are scared and anxious and react in panic, but the unarmed people that are not trained or anything are supposed to keep calm, to act according to the rules and shit like that.
And
so
I mean,
the ones that are actually fucking trained, trained to be more racist, probably like militarized.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like my friend didn't say what this guy. I guarantee you, this guy was some probably not white. Just saying in the area that my friend works in and the kind of calls that he gets typically. But just simply put is that then like, regardless if that dude had a firearm or not, like the very first reaction of a bitch boy cop is not to just shoot someone in the head.
Yeah.
Like. Yeah, and so back to the thing with the UK is that even though you have these like unarmed sort of things or whatever, there is something that then is integral within then how like systemic racism functions.
Yeah.
Because if it was as simple as just disarming the police, you like
we will all be fine.
Yeah, and it's just like it's this bizarre, weird, liberal like just fantasy of that. Then that's the only thing that then is keeping this level of control there because.
Yeah.
It's not quite.
so like just to quickly point out, because we're kind of saying things like one thing for the UK and one thing for Ireland, the difference between the UK and Ireland is that while Ireland's like use of guns amongst the police is basically like each police station, Garda station has like one gun that you have to sign 1 million forms to get out of the like locker.
Seriously?
Basically, yeah.
Wow.
Some parts of the UK are like that too, I think, as well.
So the UK is more that like there are guns readily available, but there are like different shifts. So there you will be like a lot of these cases we're talking about, these police were not like the armed police, but like next week they could have been, or the week before they were.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, or it can also be like a promotion thing as well. Like so different points in their career they were armed. Because if anyone goes into like any airport in the UK, especially like big ones like Stansted or Heathrow, you will see like police officers who are like armed with Uzis. Yeah. Like the police in the UK are not unarmed. It's just some of them are. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe going off Nick's point a little bit, I think that another thing that shows the intractable problem, like the role that police play in like society today, is that even now with all of the protests that happened May 31st, like it's not like people are on their best behavior. You can't be on your best behavior. It's not possible. And that a lot of the narratives that are created by politicians and the media only serve to justify police action further. I just have one example I wanted to bring up in front of me. Sorry to go back to the U.S. again. It was 2 days ago, 22-year-old Sean Monterosa was killed in California, and the reason the cops are called on him is because the store reported potential looting. So you have this specter that's been raised in the media, and then that gets the police called, and then they can, and of course, all witnesses say he was kneeling with his hands up. Officer said he felt threatened. The same story, but even like the terms of the debate that are supposed to be pushing this forward are the exact reasons, the reasons given in order to continue to reify the role of the police.
I mean, you have cases in the US where you yourself call the cops because I don't know, your car broke down or something and you're black and you call the cops and you end up getting shot. And you called the cops, you know, and that is, it's just, for what? You know, for what? Because you're black.
Yeah, I think it's just like, we need like, the U.S. always like, and I think we're doing this the thing that we didn't want to do right now, and I'm kind of at fault for this because I'm the one who first mentioned the U.S. So, like the U.S. is obviously like the most like what is going on that in terms of like in other countries with like the police, racism, all that kind of stuff. It exists obviously throughout Europe. It functions in a much different way, but the U.S. is like, what if you just had that, like let it, you know, bubble to like its like most volatile point and then just like gave all of those people like military weapons, you know. And I think we need to kind of like steer, like we did do the whole episode, not whole episode about the US, but we've talked about the US. It's always going to kind of come up in this discussion because it is always just like the most extreme form. But yeah, like
back on track,
there is we do need to get back on track a little bit.
Cool.
Okay.
I can wrap up our discussion of the UK. So like those are the three cases I kind of like want to talk about and draw attention to. But there are a lot more. A good example of the protests that happened, the like solidarity protests, as well as talking about like the UK's own racism in London. There was a lot of pushback against the police as well. The police were swinging the batons, so things were escalating.
They had horses.
They
I
did.
saw horses.
Yeah. For people who are looking for sources on that, Novara Media are covering that kind of stuff quite well at the moment. But like a good example of the signs you saw where like people. There's literally one I put in the show notes. It's like, the UK is not innocent. And then it's like the full list of all the names, which in a sense doesn't work as a sign because there is no way you can read that list of names without getting like stupidly close to the sign. But again, I guess that's the point because there's so many of them. So according to a charity inquest, about 1,741 people have died in police custody or otherwise following contact with the police in England and Wales. So this is excluding Northern Ireland and Scotland. Oh, the Northern Ireland figures must be wild. Since the year 1990, so since when I was born, basically. Not a single police officer has been convicted in connection to these deaths. Specifically, that situation that happened in May 31st in Lewisham, where the woman was pinned down by 6 police. That's going to face no consequences because of a terrorism law. I can't remember that happened under the Blair years. The whole area that had been cordoned off, and basically anything that can happen in that is like the purge for cops, basically, when that rule is. So there's like no consequences.
Oh, is that like the areas we have here, or was that just a one-time thing?
It's just like a one-time thing. Like they cordon off the area temporarily for suspected terrorism reasons, and then whatever happens in it.
I have a simple question for Kieran because I think you're the only one who's lived in the UK. Then, hooray!
Hooray!
Because there's also like a thing that then you notice too in the UK that then has been continuously close to music in maybe like the last 20 years with like the emergence of like, you know, black driven subcultures and the way that policing has like kind of affected that as well.
Yeah.
Because like obviously you see it in the US, it's very up and in your face, especially with how big hip hop is internationally. And that's like the main culture that most people then associate with the U.S. and pop music right now is, you know, predominantly black culture. But I think a lot of like the thing that's always just so interesting with that like kind of observing with the UK is like these bizarre, weird laws that then have affected black communities based on like, you know, trying to connect stabbings with like grime and drill and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And it's amazing because it's very just like in your face open that this is just designed to like demobilize black communities as a whole, like with just using any scapegoat that sounded good in like the 1980s in the United States is being used in the UK right now.
Yeah.
So a lot of that stuff would be centered in the part of the UK I did not live in, which is like
I know that obviously.
the southeast, which is because like the UK is incredibly centralized. Like most politicians don't really care what happens in the southeast. But to a similar sense, there was also like this kind of like.
I guess it wasn't a question; it was more just an observation.
Yeah, no,
on my part.
it's a correct observation because like there is also this like there was this anti-clubbing law, effectively like
Yeah.
So like the clubs were being shut down earlier, and the rules for that. This was in London, which is like why would you destroy the clubbing scene? But then like the effects of that was just like, oh, isn't it weird how it's happening to like all the grime nights, hip hop nights? Yeah. And it gave the police a lot of powers to crack down on that.
One more U.S. comment. Not a coincidence. Joe Biden, author of the crime bill and huge anti-clubbing, anti-MDMA advocate. If people have seen those videos.
No,
is he really?
Yeah.
Oh hell yeah!
Wow.
I thought this was a bit.
No.
Yeah, me too.
I wish.
Fuck.
Listen, Jack, I will never do the Macarena. So, and again, before we move off to the UK, again, we will probably do our own episode on it. But if anyone wants to see some of the horrors of where the UK really shows its teeth, because a lot of this police stuff is very like...
The rest of the world?
Yeah, well, yeah, okay, actually, fair point. But like, so with the violence against the black population of the UK, it is these events of like the police against like an individual, just like excess police brutality, where you have this deniability of like, oh, it's just a random event, but then you look at the whole history of it and it's like, this is happening an awful lot. If you want to see where it gets like really systematic and like no one gives a fuck, again, go to the Travelers. Strongly recommend everyone give a Google image search of Dale Farm Eviction 2011, where they basically brought in the army to burn down an entire encampment, and the only one willing to protect the travelers in that was like the Catholic Church. After the government asked the Catholic Church to, can you as the Catholic Church get them to leave? And they were like, no, we're actually going to let the women and children stay in the church. Please don't burn down the church. But then, they just set fire to like all their homes, and it's messy. But again, that's its own episode.
Who's next on our list?
Woo! Okay, a quick one that I think we can get onto, which is Sweden.
Our favorite white country.
Pure.
Yes.
So
The Scandinavian way of racism.
You buy it at IKEA and it has a funny name.
Is this racism instead of an A? It's like that O with the cross
It's
through
like
it.
racism.
So there is like a history of police brutality, especially towards like the kind of like Arab population, the like refugee population. But just one thing I want to draw attention to, which was the Black Lives Matter solidarity protest that happened
I was just about to mention that,
this weekend, where there's a lot of footage online of like when the protest was supposedly meant to end at like something like 6 o'clock in the evening. It was like ridiculously weirdly early. There's footage in a train station of like the Swedish cops just like throwing a child around.
Like
From the top rope, like
and then like remember go back like 4 years ago when there was like here's off-duty Swedish cops in New York. What was it? They're like in a subway in New York, like doing something. They were doing like a citizen's arrest and like see how they're not being violent, but they were kind of like being violent. That was
why were they like Swedish?
They were on
in New York.
There were these two cops who were on vacation and like an altercation happened in the.
They're on vacation. They're working.
Yeah, exactly. I know, right?
It's one of those 80s buddy cop films, except both of them are white and one of them's just Swedish.
Yeah, but the thing of it that then everyone was like this is the thing that then like again hate to mention the U.S. again of just being like just the extreme just like bad child of Europe that then it was like police brutality in the U.S. got so bad that like people were cheering on like Swedish cops like pinning someone to the ground and being like, "Are you okay, bro?" And like it's still not good, like still not great, like wasn't like I don't know. Fast forward to 2020, and the Swedish cops are trying to one up the,
Yeah, and they're still they still look like astronaut cops in the States.
Yeah.
Like they're padded out. They have like these things that I'd like never seen before, maybe just never seen up close. But they have like these weird things that look like guns, but they shoot like pepper spray. But
They have pepper spray guns.
yeah, pepper spray guns, but they look like guns.
Basically like a super soaker for
Yeah.
pepper spray.
Yeah.
Yeah, what, have you not seen those?
No, I had not.
Oh, okay.
I get like because whenever
I only know the ones that look like spray cans.
canisters,
Yeah.
Like the tear gas guns.
Yeah,
The ones
yeah,
that
yeah.
like pop out that look like grenade launchers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But these
I mean,
ones
I've
look
seen
like
those,
hand
but yeah.
guns. It was strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to DM Paul Joseph Watson that I have evidence of extreme violence going on in Malmö, Sweden. And that he should really look into this and just send him police. Yeah, again, police officers doing the DDT to like 17-year-old kids.
The footage in question was Stockholm, but I yes, do that. He's cracking out his phone to talk to Paul now.
Paul, sup, bro? Long time no talk.
Big fan, long time listener. The one that I wanted to bring up next, before we move on to two heavy hitters of Europe, is the Netherlands.
Oh.
Yeah.
The Netherlands.
Oh, the Netherlands.
Those guys that still do blackface every Christmas.
Yes, and in response to everything that happens, they pro Svarte Piet people made a Blackface Matters website.
Wow.
Yes.
I have never wanted
The
to like.
Netherlands.
I've never wanted to like drone strike something so badly than the country of the Netherlands in Minecraft.
I do like there was.
I'm sorry. Every one of our listeners who is Dutch. You know your country's sus. It's fine.
You're the ones who tell us about
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
Yeah.
My God.
I did see a very good comment on like Dutch like discourse of just like there's not the racism, like some chud was like the racism happened only here when there was like when black people came and whatever they invited upon themselves, and like 200 years ago there wasn't race, like okay, but he says 200 years ago there wasn't racism here, and someone went underneath and was like, yeah, because it was the North Sea.
Nice.
There was no one here.
That's such a weird take, saying like, oh yeah, but without black people there wouldn't be racism. So it's like, what?
Enter
the
Eastern
fuck?
Europe.
Yeah, enter Eastern Europe.
Like there are black people
Enter
in like Estonia
Poland.
and
And
Poland.
Latvia.
I'm just wondering if we like put all of our funds together and got just like those like the guns that the German military had in World War I that was like on a train that you could like shoot like 100 kilometers. Would that work from here?
Like you're basically saying that we do what was his name? Nemko, the anarchist in Ukraine, did, where he like controlled that territory revolution with like a gun train. We can do that.
Yeah, I want that, but I don't want the train. I just want the big gun that like you'd probably have to like
Put it on my shoulder. I can do
maybe
it.
like support it from the house next door. Like have to put up some things,
That's a very kind of bossy to say. Yeah, before there weren't like any black people in the Netherlands. Thinking of what the Netherlands did during colonialism, just
Nothing.
nothing, absolutely.
We were invited to
nothing.
Indonesia.
We were just
Okay, but
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah.
I'm stop tickling my fantasies of what I want to do to the Netherlands.
Before we send a V2 rocket in the direction of the Netherlands.
We did it, guys. Dust hands. Racism over. This is, again, very recent incidents on May 30th and 31st. Again, the exact same fucking day as the thing that was happening in the UK. There was footage captured of Dutch police implementing basically the same like restraining tactic that was used on George Floyd.
Yeah.
Like one example, I believe both of these happened in Rotterdam. Yeah, one example was literally the knee on the head. And another example was a foot on the head. These were, let's see, it was a Dutch Curaçao girl, 18 years old, and I believe a 23-year-old Dutch Surinamese person, so Suriname was a Dutch colony up until like the 90s.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, there was also related to this and the footage. There was also a lot of comments of people saying on the ground that they were being referred to by the police as monkey, and also some reports came out recently. The Dutch referred to themselves as Moroccan hunters.
Wow.
Dutch police, I should say. This is also happening at the same time that
Again, my idea still stands.
yeah.
I do like Rob's technological take to it, though. So
Probably easier to implement than the like gun train, but on my back.
yeah.
Can
Can we turn your house into a rocket silo?
I mean, yes.
Okay.
Would it be that bad if we hit Belgium?
No. That's the point.
Maybe we just go a bit further.
Yeah, but I mean, the police kind of like calling themselves like,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
like hyping
Yeah.
themselves up to be some kind of like, basically like
Yeah.
explicitly saying like, I wish we could be like a colonial army.
Yeah.
That's certainly, I have to say, not unique to the Netherlands.
How
Yeah.
to
No.
make a V2 rocket?
In Minecraft.
Thank you.
Just all the like, just the fact that they happened this past week. It's like, oh, you
Yeah.
think we do police brutality? I'll show you police
Yeah,
brutality.
he's like, oh my.
I mean, there's definitely a way
Weird
that,
alcoholic beer that the
Yeah.
like the Netherlands.
but like we do kind of have to understand the police like as a like kind of rogue class. Like they certainly carry out the state's will, and they
They get to have their own fun on the way too.
they certainly they give them a little a leash, a long leash, we can say.
So the other thing that's happening in the context of all this in the Netherlands that's quite interesting, and again, thanks to one of our podcast supporters, Svenfest, for pointing this out. Shout out. Recently passed in the Dutch Parliament. It has to go to the Dutch Senate soon, but basically they removed a law in the Netherlands that if a person dies in police custody, there's an automatic like manslaughter investigation. That was the rule before.
Oh, that was a rule before.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
They've now abolished it. So
That's one of 8 that can't wait. They're like, we can.
that one
What
could not
the
wait.
fuck they did?
Yeah, so it hasn't been abolished yet, but it has passed. It passed the parliament with only 3 MPs voting against it, and as far as I know,
I love seeing bipartisan support for
Right?
things. Finally, we can all get together, get along.
As far as I know, the 3 MPs, the parties they belong to, are not represented in the Senate. So like it's basically
So it's passed.
It's basically passed, yeah.
Fuck.
And the whole thing is like now it will have to be like people will have to like press for an investigation to happen, which as we've seen in other examples will definitely happen. And yeah, it's going to result, and this has been in the works since a case in 2016, which I think we need to do our own episode on because this has just been slowly in the works in the Netherlands of like weird racist killings. So yeah, they've kind of like, while this is happening, have tried to make the police more immune to any kind of consequences for their actions.
Great idea.
Woo! So yep.
Yeah.
It only gets better now though with the countries, right? Like we're not ending up on the 2 biggest violent. I guess you can't
The
rank
UK is
these.
strong.
You can't rank these. They're all horrible. They're all disgusting.
They all have their
Everyone
own
except
racism.
for Ireland was a former colonial power, in one way or another.
Yeah. So
Of this list, mind you, like there are the other countries we're not going to touch on.
this is actually a good. This reminded me of something of a lot of people talking about like, oh, it's not as bad as in the States, which that's also another argument. Whereas like, so you have the extreme version of this is a US problem, it doesn't happen here. But then the next step up, the concession they will make to people like us,
The 6
is-
stages of
of grief. Yeah. The next concession they'd make to us is like, well, it's not as bad.
Yeah.
To which case, it's like, it should be 0.
Yeah.
Well, I think because we mentioned this on the show before too, is that then like although the United States and Europe have a shared history, the United States' history is far more common to a country like Haiti than it is to any European country.
Yeah.
So it's going to be different because Europe is the central of colonial and imperial power. The United States, as you know, Rob has probably mentioned 100,000 times this show, is a federal colonial project that's still in continuation.
Yeah, that's
as
Swedish
Haiti
shit,
was.
actually.
Yeah.
Thinking of that, it's actually like a colony, but the people stayed there.
Yeah. And that's how federal colonialism.
I have to
I don't know. I know, but I mean, but they took it all, you know, like basically they replaced everyone.
Well, a book I was
Well said.
rereading at the moment. Sorry, Rob. Just real quickly is Peter Frase's Four Futures.
That's a bop.
Yeah, but one of the things he posits is the idea of exterminism. The idea that when a section of labor becomes useless, the deaths and violence of them ramp up. I think one of the examples he uses is when kind of like the Chinese markets liberalized and people had access to the Chinese labor, Israel started ramping up the violence towards Palestine, which up until that point they'd been using as cheap labor.
Yeah.
And if you look at the US from the end of slavery to now as just one very long exterminism project, it's deeply upsetting.
Yeah.
I just you have to acknowledge, especially the role the U.S. has now, or had up until very quite recently, perhaps, as the world hegemon. But even to separate the United States from the rest of the Americas is kind of a form of like white supremacy apologia. Like they're different.
Yeah.
Like all the Americas have the same
The distinction
the,
between
the same creation. There were white settlers, black slaves, indigenous people, Asian indentured labor brought over. Like it's all the same.
Yeah.
the distinction
Literally all the same system.
It's the distinction between Europe and Asia is built on racism, but so is the distinction between North and South America. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Actually, Brazil has the exact same history as the United States does.
Exactly. And like especially you can always definitely spot it when people are like the distinction, like the more accepted distinction between North and South America is the Panama Canal, but then you'll also get some like particularly Canadians and Americans who will say it's the Mexican border, and you're like,
It's almost fitting that it's the Panama Canal because that was an American imperial project to be like, I'm gonna draw a line right here.
Yeah. John McCain's birthplace.
Yep.
yeah, take that, China. They start building the Nicaragua Canal.
All right.
So next on our list, and this is where I hand off to my lovely co-hosts, Germany.
Yeah, speaking of past laws, Germany just passed an anti-discrimination law.
Take that, you swamp
And-
bitches.
And now we're fine. We saw racism, guys.
done.
We're
Racism
done.
Yeah, it's over. Racism 2020. Germany solved it. Okay, every lib was actually right. This
Yeah.
is how you do it.
Well-
That's gonna be a mess.
Yeah.
Do you want to go into a little bit depth of that about how it's?
First of all, the CDU was having a field day, saying like, we can't do that. We can't pass an anti-discrimination law because we want to discriminate against Arabs. How do we crack down on clan culture in Neukölln, for example?
I mean, just you
like,
could
how
crack
do
down
we
on their
racial-
illegal activities.
How do we racial profile if we can't discriminate?
Every Arab is part of a gang. I just know it.
Yeah,
How do I
exactly.
stop my daughter from dating this character?
Fuck. Yeah, actually, it's interesting. Well, and also the youth group of the CDU, they put out the nicest of the propaganda.
My favorite set of 30-year-olds.
And 50-year-olds, 30-years who, 16-year-olds who look like 30-year-olds, and 50-year-olds
Who behave like a 50-year-old. They were having a fun time while everyone was caring about Black Lives Matter. They really cared about blue lives by having very romantic statements about them, saying all cops are
horny
beautiful, very horny.
All cops are thoughts. They're pogs.
I'm not sure if we've talked about this. I can't remember if we've talked about this on an episode or if I've just had a conversation with Rob that I didn't record. But like the whole propaganda thing in the US or in Germany of like the cop influencers and that weird video of like the police precinct in I think it was Saxony-Anhalt where they went through the like women's changing room of cops.
Wait, what?
You showed me that.
Shit, I haven't seen that.
No. The propaganda in the US is like, look at this cop doing the Macarena, or look at this cop with a cute puppy. And in Germany, it's like, hey, you want to fuck?
Look at this fucking hot babe who is taking care of your community.
Really, really horny for cops.
Don't you want her to step on your head?
Germany loves cops so much they still use the same slogan they used for the SR and the SS. I mean, dein Freund und Helfer.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
But,
well, really done. So, yeah, but speaking about racism in Germany.
I was going to say, speaking of first that anti-discrimination law thing, the thing got passed.
okay.
Did you see the very fine print of it?
No.
It's
we can still discriminate.
It pretty much, yeah. So
Psych.
literally, yeah. So it has the first things that like about you can't discriminate of sexual orientation, race, religion, this and that and that. And the last one, which is very weird, which
Here
is
we go.
worldview, which is not a thing. Like
As in, you can or can't?
you cannot discriminate based on worldview. But I
That
don't know what
means
that
Nazis?
means.
You can't discriminate me for being racist. That's
Yeah,
my
yeah,
worldview.
exactly.
Like
Yeah.
what? But that's the thing is that then let's say that your worldview is just
I
Turks
hate.
are bad.
What if your
Yeah.
worldview is Tom Cotton's? You need to be able to be published in the New York Times.
Yeah,
Same
and
in
that's the
Germany.
thing. I just don't know because then that just that takes everything that then was in that bill and makes it
Yeah.
just like a weird variable depending on.
So is it discrimination? Wait. So if someone discriminates against you because they think gay people shouldn't marry,
Okay, but
Can
are
you
you
charge him for
brown?
discrimination?
Are you brown or are you white? Who are making the discrimination?
the discrimination is white. The person.
No. The
Wait,
group
I'm
doing
confused.
it. The group
Yeah,
doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's what it will come down to.
Yeah. The group doing it. So you're a Christian group, but it's
yeah,
your belief.
discriminating. Yeah.
Yeah, you're fine
yeah.
then.
Yeah, exactly. Because then they say, "Oh, that is not actually
yeah.
discrimination because that is a word view."
That's a worldview. Yeah.
So
Does that
So so you're actually discriminating against the word view.
It's going to come down to that.
If you're gonna charge them with discrimination, oh my god, what the
But
fuck?
also, does this contradict any of the decently anti-Nazi laws that exist?
Yeah.
Because that's a worldview.
Yeah.
No,
Or the
this is
Reichsbürger shit, is that a word?
I don't
view,
know.
you
That's they really.
They also don't know. I'd say.
Yeah, probably.
They passed.
So this will be useless. Let's say it like
Yeah.
that. This is just useless.
Or
shit.
it will be settled in the courts, which, as we remember from our previous news, the German courts are just fucking wild.
Yes. So, but yeah, speaking about actual race, there's always Germany is not doing well. Let me tell you. Now there are actually cases, and they're you see them a lot on you saw them today as well. People asking for justice for Uri Jallo, for example.
Yeah, which
This
we
is-
talked about on one previous episode. a
Exactly.
bit.
We didn't do it in depth yet. Should we?
just a quick refresher.
Okay,
for-
so in 2005, in 2005, Uri Jallo was found burned in a prison cell, in a police station in Dessau, the thing, what the police said is that he set himself on fire.
That thing that people do
Yeah.
in prison cells.
In prison cells, especially when they are handcuffed and their feet are tied or something like that, he was completely restrained. There was nothing found, no lighter, nothing. And as far as I know, the bed and shit like that was a non-burnable. I don't know what that is. A non-burnable bed,
Fire
etc.,
resistant.
etc.
Fire resistant,
Yeah, fire resistant. Sorry, non-burnable bed.
I don't know the German word for it. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. So, and in his lungs there was no carbon monoxide. Is that the
Carbon
Yeah.
monoxide.
Yeah. found? That means that he was unconscious when he was burned.
Oh.
Yes. Oh. And this had
This
to
magic trick of him burning himself is getting.
while being unconscious. Yeah. And this led
You're
to
saying he didn't suffocate then from
exactly. He
Okay,
didn't
yeah.
suffocate from the smoke. Yeah. This led to different autopsies. There was the first one was he was he burned to death. There was
spontaneous combustion.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
thing that doesn't happen to people actually.
Of course, people asked for another, especially relatives and stuff, asked for another autopsy. There was a lot of pushing the case around. A lot of people, a lot of persecutors gave it to someone else and gave it up again. Then they finally said, okay, this is bullshit. And And the persecutor finally said, okay, this was not suicide. And then was it the Staatsanwaltschaft? I don't know, like of Land Saxony? Dessau ist in Sachsen, oder? Yeah, Saxony. Yeah. Took it to another level. So took it away. As they said, okay, we're going to persecute this. We're going to press charges. They took it away from him.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the people are still fighting. The people are still fighting for justice for Ujalo. You see it again and again in all the anti-racist and also the Black Lives Matter Germany chapters. But you have different cases in Germany.
I want to add to that just quickly because it's more police brutality adjacent. But the case of Yangji Li, because she was also murdered in Dessau, and they tied it to like white kids who were, I guess, the sons of prominent police officers, and they basically got off with nothing. So the Dessau police, certainly not something fishy going on there.
Oh, fun and shiny in Dessau, definitely. Yeah, true. This is actually, there was a fucking same precinct or something like that, right? Yeah. But as we were talking about how you don't necessarily need weapons or like armed police to kill people, and disarming is not enough. Abolishing is the only thing you can do. Is other cases like Laya Alama Condé. That was in Bremen, I think. Was it? Yeah, it was Bremen. Arrested by Bremen police. And this is not the only case where this happened. This is several cases of that. That they forced him to take amatics. So the stuff that makes the vomit-inducing drugs.
Oh yes, I read about this.
Yeah.
One. Yeah.
And this happened several times in Germany. That people would choke on their own vomit because they would force them to take these drugs, and they would have them in weird positions, restrained, etc., etc. So you would choke on your own vomit, or you would have a heart attack or something like that because you were, I don't know, probably under, I don't know.
For American listeners, what's that called again? It's like something.
Epitaph.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the episode of Family Guy where they all drink the stuff and they start vomiting everywhere. If you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But like,
so the situation for Laya Alama was that he drowned in his own vomit. Only the doctor was charged. In other cases, there wasn't even a doctor there. It was with Achidi John. If I mispronounce his name, I'm really, really sorry. And it was in Hamburg, and he was also forced to take Maddox through a gastric tube without having an anesthetist.
anesthesia.
Yeah, the guy who does that?
Oh, anesthesia.
Anesthesiologist.
Yes.
Oh, those guys.
Yeah.
Anesthesist. There you go. Having anyone like around, there was no one present, so the police actually did it, as far as I do.
Maddox through a gastric tube as well.
Yes.
Oh, that's horrifying.
And he was killed by a combination of a heart defect and the stress taking the medics, and by being under the influence of other drugs why they did that. So there was no medical consultation or anything. They just did it. So this is actually a way German police kills people, black people.
I'm sorry if this is super obvious, but like German fucking murderers and using specifically sadistic medical ways to murder people. Long history. At least the past 80 years. No, 87 years. No, I didn't do the math right, but
This is
yeah, the Nazis did that.
Thanks for pointing that out. But horrible shit. You know, it's so you see, the police will find methods to kill you, and there's this other. This is actually security guards, but that is also like that happens a lot in Germany. And I think you know more about that, Rob. Maybe it's a case of William Tanu Bobda.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned it last year because there were several protests in Hamburg about it. That's honestly the one I had in mind because I don't think that got that much national press in Germany. But cases like with all the George Floyd protests, like I saw multiple signs today with his face and his name and his case.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean it was by basically the hospital security or the security at the hospital. But I mean, there's no accountability. I mean, it's the same.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same way.
So yeah, it was
The
basically
same role, I should say.
Yeah, it was basically also like they were sitting on him, handcuffed him, acting very brutally against him. So he went into cardiac arrest, as far as I know. So these are, the cases in Germany that, I mean, the especially, outstanding one is the Uri Jallo case in that sense, because it happened twice with the same precinct, or in Dessau at least, and it's something that actually like wants to cover up,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just on the idea of a cover-up, I was alluding to Germany earlier when I said police forces that consider themselves like their own vigilantes who do what they want. I don't think
that's a lot of other countries as
well, it's true, but I don't think if we've talked about it that much on the show, but like there's just there's so much evidence that there's like active neo-Nazi network. In the German.
Oh, like
police.
just the other day.
the other day,
Yeah, exactly. The other fucking day, it was uncovered that after the Breitenscheidplatz, where the dude ran in with the truck, whatever, that whole thing during Christmas time. That was a few years ago. Apparently, evidence was given from the police chief to the AfD.
So the right-wing party in Parliament.
Because his reasoning for it was that, I want to run for I think he was in like Tiptow Köpenick or something like that. He wanted to run for office.
Sounds fitting.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not the only case. Like you
No,
had
of course
police officer conspiring with like a lawyer to kill left-wing people. You have cases. Just several fucking cases. You have police cars that have
the head of the
compact
fucking
magazine like just on display in their police van, which is a far-right magazine in Germany.
We know the NSU had connections to, if not police, and the Verfassungsschutz.
Yeah.
And then the former head of the Verfassungsschutz giving the AfD tips and tricks on how to like avoid investigation.
I mean,
And
you have
how
the
many
whole
AfD
fucking
members are just
NSU thing.
former, like high-ranking former army officials. Too.
So the NSU is National Socialist Underground. Is the thing that was a killing spree of this terroristic right-wing group that went on from 2000 to 2009.
I think so.
Yeah, the years don't matter. They murdered a bunch of people.
They murdered a bunch of people. And of course, since Germany is so racist, so the people were mostly of like a Turkish or Arab descent.
There was like one Greek
there was a
person,
Greek
but they
person.
confused them for
Yeah,
it.
Exactly.
exactly.
And
Typical Nazis.
And what do I want to say? Because Germany is so racist, they thought, okay, this is just clan killing. These are they probably like have some other fucking stuff going on,
The
and
only
it's
solution to all these dead Turkish people is to lock up more Turkish people.
exactly.
And we can't do that with an anti-discrimination law. Can you fucking
Damn.
believe that, Kieran?
My worldview is this is the only way to solve problems.
Yeah.
I think I found a loophole.
The thing that then, like with that too, of the most bizarre thing of it is that then with the NSU trials, is that then witnesses just end up dying.
Yeah, exactly. So prime key witnesses ended up dying. Documents were shredded and suddenly not found anymore.
And then the main woman who was on, who was,
Beate Schäpe.
Yeah, Beate Schäpe, pretty much got out of charges by being like, I was dumb and in love.
I was in love with both of the Ubers or something like that.
Do you guys want to hear the worst thing about all of this? It's terrible. Okay. So the worst thing about all of this is it's kind of funny. It's funny and it's horror. So we've talked about just there about like how insane the NSU murders are. We definitely will do our own episode on that because it's wild.
Yes.
But if you go to the Spy Museum in Berlin, they talk about spying. It's pretty cool because there was a lot of spies in Berlin during the Cold War.
Yeah.
It's an interesting history. But then they also talk about one of the tactics of spying or disinformation is conspiracy theories. And one of the conspiracy theories listed on this wall mural thing in full detail about how it's not a conspiracy theory is the NSU murders. and everything about the NSU murders is perfectly resolved. It's all
What the
fine.
fuck?
We solved that with a court case. And that's up there with like
nothing suspicious happened with like
That's-
witnesses dying or
that's
something.
up there in that museum with fucking like 9/11 trutherism and UFOs are a thing.
Maybe the spy museum is an op. You thought about that?
German conspiracy theories are literally things like the Earth is hollow, and they're hiding, and all of the they're hiding stuff inside the Earth.
They
that's
look like
that's like what
Nazis-
4-year-olds think.
Yeah,
like, what if the Earth were hollow? Okay.
Nazis legitimately believed that to the point that they tried to shoot rockets up straight to see if it would reach other countries. That is absolutely true.
Okay, but here's the thing. Here's the thing.
Okay, sorry, master race.
It is the same disciplinary logic. Like, you are crazy to think that all this violence that's out in the open has anything to do with, that that we're doing it. Come on, what are you talking about?
You're so crazy to think that, but watch us shoot this rocket up into the air and hit North Korea. Let's go.
There are
Yes, look into how many high-ranking Nazi officials believed in Hollow Earth theory. Yeah. It's a lot.
there are so like
Yeah, that was a weird of Nazi as a terrorist.
Yeah. The whole Black Sun fucking weird shit.
There was
whatnot.
some weird shit going on.
just in.
Yeah.
Sorry, but that this reminded me of that time that
Maybe there's a weird connection in Germany between esoteric shit a lot of the time and Nazism. I don't know. But
Actually, there is. Yeah, I know that was obviously.
But the thing that I really love about all of this is when the CIA basically got the Dalai Lama installed and did all that bullshit there, they did that with the assistance of former Nazi SS officers who knew Tibet really well. And if ever you go into the reason of why they knew Tibet really well, is because they were looking for magic beans or something.
Yeah.
It's so fucking dumb.
Doing Operation Paperclip, but just so the Nazis can explain these faraway lands to us.
That's the biggest fucking dunk in Indiana Jones is that the Nazis are just just scouring the earth for just these just dumb fucking artifacts. The only thing is that in the Indiana Jones universe they're real, but the perfect backdrop for it is that the Nazis were just stupid.
Yeah.
Germany,
Germany,
Day
yeah.
X, Hannibal's army. Google those things. I can sum it up. Wait, I got a summary for Germany. Basically, they're saying racist lives matter.
Yes.
Would it surprise you if there was a protest for that today too?
Ooh, of course there was. Should we move on to France?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we get.
I think this is our last.
This is our last one, and it's a doozy. Also, we should probably record a trigger warning at the beginning of this.
Yeah. We're making too many jokes.
I mean, not the jokes necessarily. I think we're being okay with the jokes, but we
Okay.
did describe those cases in detail.
I know. Yeah.
Okay, we can record
Okay,
them
but
at
are
the
the
end
jokes
and all.
really okay?
Yeah, they're fine.
Yeah, because I'm scared that we don't take it seriously.
I am serious about sending a V2 rocket to the Netherlands.
Oh yeah, me too.
Cool.
No, I'm just.
I mean, I think we're making the jokes about the bad people. We're not making jokes about the people that then are the victims of things. There's a big difference in that.
okay.
We can mention that in the trigger warning as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we now come to one of the big boys of le racisme, France.
Nailed it, dude.
Thanks. Le racisme.
Racism.
Really hit that. Anyway,
If this becomes a bit of just you mocking the French language, I'm for it.
yeah, it's dumb. Actually, I will be using the wrong definite article. La racisme.
You think racism's a chick, bro?
Dude, cancelled.
If racism were a woman,
All right, guys.
Treat her right.
So in summary, Europe is a guy.
Did you just say treat her right? Oh my god.
Yes.
In summary, Europe is one of those hordy on main for racism people, and France is the
France is like Pepe Le Pew of fucking racism.
yeah, France is doing those Instagram comments, complimenting women they do not know.
Hell yeah. Damn, baby, you look so good.
Hit me up, and then they actually just post their own phone number on a public forum. Anyway, France. France is a big deal.
France is a country in Europe.
France is a country
you should
in
do the
Europe.
Ben Shapiro thing where you just like list off the first like Wikipedia facts about it.
Right. I was actually listening to this is a bit of, I'll mention it afterwards. But yeah.
That's premium content.
Yeah, right. Premium
Kieran's-
content.
Kieran's random thoughts.
Kieran's random thoughts. Yes, I think Rob and Yulia probably have France. Rob has read a bunch of stuff that made him sad. Yulia speaks French, so let's go.
I do.
Well, I would say maybe before today. I don't know. It seemed like the biggest protests in Europe were in Paris.
They're escalating it, and rightfully so.
Right.
Yeah.
That's for a few reasons. I would say because there's a very long history in France of both racist attacks and anti-racist organizing.
Yeah.
And I would say the recent political situation in France, things like the Gilets jaunes are also, that movement is about a lot of things, but I would say it's also kind of inseparable from protesting police brutality.
Yes, definitely.
Certainly now. So this week, 20,000 people, as estimate, demonstrated in Paris. Lots of French politicians pointed out that this was against the corona quarantine laws.
Yeah, the concern trolling about like the pandemic at the moment is a tactic that's been used quite extensively for all of this.
Yeah, definitely.
But in addition to talking about the George Floyd case and showing solidarity, there was also a lot of talk, and the family of Adama Traore spoke. So I just want to introduce that case. It's not that old, from 2016, and basically he was just pretty young. I have to pull up his age.
24
actually.
years old.
24, and he was, the police I think were stopped his friend or his the person he was with, and he ran because he was scared, and the police tracked him down and murdered him. The family
basically killed him the same way George Floyd was killed.
Exactly.
Actually.
The police didn't give the family any information for a long time. They were basically trying to buy off the family, saying, "We'll give you the body back. We will let family from Mali come to France and even give them visas to stay, but just accept the body and don't ask any questions." But the family pushed for a second autopsy, and it was only the second autopsy that revealed that he didn't have any drugs or alcohol in his system, which is what the police were claiming, and that he died from asphyxiation.
Yeah. And actually, there's been like an ongoing repression of the family and the organizing committee against, to fight for justice for Adama Traore. And there's actually been like press charges and stuff like that, and saying that they insulted the police. So they're trying to make them, to keep them silent.
Yeah.
Because they've been very out there. They have been organizing. They have been protesting. They have been fighting for justice. And they joined when the Gilets jaunes movement started. They joined the Gilets jaunes movement. So now then you can't see them like you can basically see them as inseparable right now. Like when it comes to solidarity, like supporting each other and supporting the cause of it. So.
No, it's good. Like my memory of like how Gilets jaunes developed, because I think we forgot about all this because coronavirus. Then these protests have kind of just, I don't know, wiped the slate blank, I guess. But like Gilets jaunes kind of evolved into like an almost general strike in France that was happening like right up until the pandemic stopped it from happening, and that was a coalition of a lot of different forces and. Particularly the Gilets Noirs as well, the like very openly anti-racist, like immigration reform group, most of whom are like immigrants in tenuous situations and like asylum seekers, which it is fucking brave to protest like that when you're in such
really. This is completely just a comment. I'm not trying to say what people should or shouldn't do, but it seems to me like the Gilets jaunes is kind of, and the associated movements, it is kind of like a template for where these things might go in the U.S. Like a constant agitation, and like like of course it might turn into other things, Who knows? Maybe it'll turn into an electoral movement. Maybe it'll turn into other. I'm not putting value judgment on that. I'm just saying who knows what will
They
happen.
tried that with the Gilets Jaunes party. It was weird. They tried to become like a French version of the 5-star movement from Italy. It was very strange.
But as a you know what I mean, to actually capture this, to keep the movement going, to keep the agitation going, that I think that would be the model, right? Something like that.
Because yeah, no, I agree. I think the problem you had with the Gilets Jaunes internationally was everyone tried to copy paste it rather than I think it's probably comparable to talk about what is happening in the States now to what the Gilets Jaunes were doing at the height of because they are these kind of spontaneous movements that
nationwide,
which
is an important thing. You know, you didn't only have that in Paris. Because you had the Paris Commune in Paris. We know how that went.
Brilliantly. And communism for everyone.
Well, let's talk about France and the idea of France a little bit. Because as Macron is saying now, but as many have said, I'll quote Macron from last year. You cannot or do not speak of, quote, repression or, quote, police violence. Those words are unacceptable under rule of law. Basically saying, and then it's also Macron's spokesperson, who, as I understand it in the French system, has a ministerial position, so they kind of have more influence. Her name is Sibeth Ndiaye, and she's a black woman, and she was, and I don't even want to pick on her because you're doing a job. I mean, she's part of Macron's political party, saying, quote, there is no systemic racist state violence in France.
Well, that's an interesting thing because somehow that's an argument from different parties, you know. This weird party, I really don't understand them. I have to look into that. They're called Printemps Républicain, so Republican Spring. Very beautiful. And I've read articles by Le Monde. There was someone saying, okay, they're basically so. Okay, this sounds like horseshoe theory now. No, but in the way they are against identity politics that much that they actually end up being supporting some far right positions.
Of course,
saying I don't know, dumping on feminism and stuff like that, saying there is no systematic racism as well.
I should clarify. She said there's no systemic state violence. Not that she didn't mention racism, but she was saying specifically that you cannot compare the police brutality in France to the U.S.
Yeah, that's
France,
basically what.
It's just literally it's what the U.S. says with the bad apples thing. Yeah. Of course, the whole analogy doesn't make any sense because bad apples. The whole point is that they ruin all the apples. Yeah. That's how it goes.
The whole phrase is the bad apples spoil the barrel.
Yeah. But that's basically the argument from the French government that it's just single cases. You know, that's just how it works.
That's actually the same argument that this guy from the Republican Spring made as well. Amina El Khatmi is his name. Wait, what did you just say? That you can't compare it to the US. So, yeah.
That argument again.
But this obviously falls apart. I think that's absurd. In basically every country we've had so far seems to make some version of that argument that you can't compare this to the U.S.
Yeah. Either in some sort of institutional level or just a lot of people are saying,
or we're different, basically. Yeah. But if in any country, I feel like France is erasing the fucking decades of anti-racist organizing. Yeah. I don't know. We can't address it all now, but we can talk about a few things. There have been a lot of uprisings of this kind in France over the years. I don't know where you want to start. Just talk about the banlieues or some.
Banlieues?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about that in a different episode about Jacques Chirac.
Yes. Yeah. Hang on. I'll get the name of that episode because it's a very fun episode name. Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I forgot I was going to be called on this.
Yeah.
But I'll just add one while Kieran's looking for that. I'll just add one comment that that Macron line that by definition there is no police violence because we are a country with a rule of law. There is no systemic violence because we are because we have law and democratic values. That's the flip side of the U.S. You cannot speak of an uprising that is privileged white adventurism. You know what I mean? It's defining in the same way that it's ignoring what's right in front of you. That there's police violence. That there's like racist violence all around you.
Yeah.
That can't be acknowledged because they're saying basically they're implicitly saying that's all justified because we live in a democratic rule of law society in France, and then the opposite is being said in the U.S. or maybe the flip side of the same idea is said in the U.S. where there can't be any uprising because we're a good country that represents everybody. Everyone is a part of it, and any uprising or looting or anything is whatever white thrill-seeking anarchist privileged rich trust
Yeah.
Yes,
the idea.
yes.
Yeah.
It's
Me,
the same,
yes.
it's always it's defining.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, what can't change? I mean, the state can only speak its one language. They can't change it has to defend that its existence, right, in this way, and any like facts to the contrary have to be explained away. They
So-
don't exist. It's a single case.
Yeah, so it's basically you say, okay, we have this you write a law, but you don't implement it in the sense of like you have an idea of the state, or you have you in a law, I don't know, Antidiskriminierungsgesetz or something, but you actually don't do anything. But you say, look at we have it.
I mean, like the biggest example of this is like the Civil Rights Act in the United States.
I think in France, correct me because I don't know that much about France, but what a lot of French commentators say when they talk about like unrest, they're like, well, we're just a regicidal society, because we've always overthrown kings. And implicit in that is there's no more king. We have the good society, so it's just kind of we're just getting out there, stretching our legs, whatever. It's just, you know what I mean? It's denying by saying
just give us a king we can overthrow. We're fine.
But by calling it, you know what I mean? That regicidal, like that was the only goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's another way that's like, I don't know, implicitly saying that, this.
Can I declare Macron my king, and then we can...
I feel like that's easy. Let's just declare Macron.
I like that.
So the episode that you already talked about the band news on was
Yeah.
called, brilliantly titled, if I do say so myself, Austrian Orgies versus Neoliberal French Sex Parties.
Woo!
Episode
Very clear.
36.
You get
We have great episode names. You're right, Kieran.
I think we were just very horny when we recorded that.
Probably. Well, yeah, in this one we are like addressing the riots in the banlieue that were happening in I can't lie right now.
Chirac's.
Under Chirac, when Sarkozy was still Minister of Interior.
Yes.
I was supposed to say like something like home
Yeah.
home guy, the home
guy.
the home guy.
the stay-at-home wife of
Of France,
Exactly.
basically, yeah.
So and fucking we all know Sarkozy called them basically like bugs or like roaches.
He said they all smelled funny as well. He
Yeah,
said,
yeah. Exactly,
the exact quote is that no one wants to live beside black people because they all smell funny. I remember having to read about that for my French class. They're like, here's some French news. I'm like, wait, does this say what I think it says?
yeah. Look at this racist.
Yeah, he's not good.
Nice, good. So there's always been repression and racism in France, as like since the colonies, and we know like the socioeconomic situation of a lot of people that are like part of a minority is way worse than the ones of I don't know, white Parisian, especially white Parisian, because we have this outskirt of Paris that is a banlieue, and I mean, probably people have seen La Haine or something like that. I mean, there are movies about that, but the situations in the banlieue is
not good.
Thank you.
It was literally the example. Then the other, like during what is it? Kieran mentioned this on the show that there was
During the Corona lockdown.
during the Corona lockdowns there was an instance of police brutality, and then like French news just like dealt with it by putting like trap beats over it.
Over
No
the footage of the
way.
riot.
Yes.
No way.
Yeah, it was. It's a little
Only
bit too.
ever trap beats.
Yeah, it's a little bit too surreal.
Yeah.
Just like how like on the head they are about like. By the way, this is a poor area.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
racialized. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to. So I think that's a general rule of, that we've been talking about a lot of this. Like the policing at home is developed through colonialism abroad. That's true of the direct. That's true of the literal tactics.
Yeah.
Whether it's police tactics or the fucking concentration camps.
Yeah.
That's true of the people.
Yeah.
They lost their job like being a colonial administrator, and they're like, guess I'll become a police
Look at
commissioner.
Germany. The first concentration camps were in nowadays Namibia.
Right.
Yeah.
The first genocide was on the Herero.
A lot of very brutal cops in the 80s and 90s in the UK were all basically first deployed in Northern Ireland during the Troubles in the 60s and 70s, where they were like, being on the forefront and the vanguard of using rubber bullets to like murder Catholics.
Yeah.
But in
so-called non-lethal.
I feel like in France in particular, there's this whole dynamic kind of becomes very real over the event of the Algerian War and the war for independence there, because it was an absolutely fucking brutal violence used by the French colonial administrators. The tactics they used there were directly used back in France. The secret police in Algeria was key for developing other secret police networks around the world, things like Operation Condor. Like that was a lot of the
literally had the French French Foreign Legion.
Yeah.
Like an entire wing of your military that then is pretty much kind of like this like clandestine service to just like monitor imperial holdings.
And the connection is clear. In I think the example of the Paris Massacre in 1961 covered up for almost 40 years afterwards. The police, there were several thousand pro-FLN Algerians marching in Paris, and the Paris police killed, it's estimated, 100 to 300 of them in very brutal ways, drowning them in the river. And that's, I mean, it's in 1961 when France's fucking dying empire is like losing its grasp of its colonial holdings, and it can only lash out with violence.
Yeah, and then, like in a modern sense too, like there is this happening. Like, I mean, obviously, I hate to go back to this country one more time, but you're seeing this in the United States too. Within I think the most obvious example of it was the Dakota Access Pipeline stuff. Yeah, where you have then companies taking then the legal matters into their own hands, and they like one of the groups that they hired was like a subsidiary of Blackwater. Yeah, there was so policing is becoming much more privatized in the U.S. in that sense, which was a colonial tactic from Iraq and whatnot.
Before we move away from the States and back to France and stuff, but like there was the Dakota Access Pipeline, as far as I remember, saw like anti-riot techniques implemented that had been perfected in Iraq.
Yeah.
And lastly, the really insane thing that Rob pointed out to us right before we started this is that the thing that's going viral in the moment is all the like U.S. soldiers doing the Macarena in like Atlanta and streets in the U.S. And then people are now pointing out they did this in Iraq. There's all these like quote unquote viral videos of them teaching Iraqi kids how to do the Macarena as like a bunch of soldiers. Like that's literally just you. Like there's multiple videos of that happening in Iraq, which means it was a tactic. It wasn't like the spontaneous candid camera moment that they tried to pull it off as. And now they're just like, all right, time to do Operation Cool Guy in Atlanta or whatever the fuck it's called. And like teach them how to do like, I don't know, maybe they'll update it to like the Lost Ketchup song. Does anyone remember that?
Yeah. No, they're gonna teach them how to do the nay.
We'll do that in like 2045.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like, I do have faith in the thing. I do have faith in the U.S. military as being, an up to date,
pop culture machine.
I mean,
just in case it wasn't clear, fascism can be very cringe. It's still fucking brutal.
Hollow Earth theory.
Do you have more you want to say?
Do we not remember? Wait, one more thing about that. Do we not remember just like all the fucking videos of troops dancing? Like not even just the Macarena, but there was this thing of just like troops being like bored in Iraq, just like dancing. Like I don't need that shit. Like
France.
Yeah. So we were talking. Unfortunately, we were talking about like different ways cops kill people. And in France, somehow it's quite common that people die when they're in jail or in prison or something like that. So There are cases of people that were found, I don't know, with bruises and shit like that, or hanged in their prison cell, or like
Suffocated.
suffocated, yeah, and then said like, oh yeah, he hanged himself or something without any
Oh, there was
evidence
no
of that,
rope
yeah.
and- okay.
Or people fall down a bridge and land in the river, and because they just jumped apparently or something. So there's a lot of cases like those that are not investigated. A lot of stuff that happens in prison, and apparently, I mean, people like have to. I mean, we see that shit with the Gilets Jaunes movement. How the police is acting in the streets, like when people protesting. How the
Sorry, fascist in the streets.
Or
I can't think of the other thing for the sheets, but
no, it's fascist in the streets. Macron's personal bodyguard in the sheet.
yeah, that one.
Hey, that
Yeah.
guy. Yeah, look that up.
So, and I mean, yeah, we've seen it now, especially with the big protest. There are cases where people were chased and then like try to get away from the police and then end up dead somehow. There's this case of Ziad Benna and Bouna Traoré. What is with that name? Sorry, but like yeah, that were like that ran into something like a enclosure of what is a substation or something like that, yeah, and then got electrocuted. So they were basically just running away, like two teenagers.
And they were basically chased into like
like
a power breaker or a power station,
exactly,
for
something
public
like
electricity.
That. Yeah.
wait,
Exactly.
aren't the trains in France, like in Paris, super old that they still have a third line?
I didn't.
Okay.
Didn't pay attention. Yeah.
There's some like I know that like New York subways have like a third rail that if you touch it you die.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So I mean you have openly a racist cop like
Yeah.
using slurs, etc., etc. We've seen the forces; they don't care if who you are, how old you are. If you're pregnant. I don't know. They don't. Yeah.
I think a part of why I feel like the Black Lives Matter solidarity protests have escalated because I think everyone saw the footage of like the mound of bikes that were burning as like a barricade in France. It was Paris. Because I feel like in regards to the BLM protests, they're like a couple of they're a little bit ahead because one of the things that that's happening in this protest now in the States is the violence that was always used against black people is now being used against white sympathizers, and that's
interesting. Yeah.
That's kind of what happened with Gilets Jaunes.
Yeah.
Because there's a good documentary on the violence that happened to Gilets Jaunes, and they talk namely about 3 victims. 2 of them are white French guys. One who got his eye shot out by a rubber bullet.
Yeah.
Another who was a teacher who got his hand blown off. But the third is being spoken on behalf of her daughter, but is an Algerian woman in Marseille, 80-year-old who was while in her balcony looking at the Gilets Jaunes protest was shot by a police officer with a gas canister.
Yes. Her name was Zineb Redouane.
French Algerian name. It's not familiar with it, unfortunately, but died with a gas canister being shot at her, and it's a big part of the Gilets Jaunes is while that is she belongs to a minority of people in France who have been brutalized for a very, very long time. There is also those 2 other guys that I mentioned who were white French. So that's kind of why I feel like the French were so able to respond to and match the escalation that the American protests have reached. Yeah.
I have one kind of final thing.
Yeah.
Cool. Should I say it? Okay.
Yeah, me too.
I just wanted to say, maybe in closing, to tie this back to France and the Algerian Civil War. I think what a lot of people in all these protests, and I guess what we're trying to do, but really just try to shed light on what other people are doing, is a kind of like communal practice of history. I mean, there's a lot of talk about how this is the end of history and is history back and all that. But like you see in so many of these cases, the like how is it like a professional historian supposed to do history? The fucking sources don't exist, or they're not given to you. They're only given to the fucking right wing party. You know what I mean? Yeah. So how are you supposed to do it? And it is in kind of these stories and bringing up these, and I mean keeping keeping the oral history alive, like what actually happened, and that in these moments, like in George Floyd's death, that you can connect it to something bigger, you know, and so many people in Europe are just connecting what's happening in the U.S., which is so often treated as just like, oh, just a cultural thing. It's all the cool like Hollywood and all this. Yeah. They're actually saying, oh, this, you know, you might relate to people or to events in the U.S. on a deeper level than just whatever than just culture. Maybe there's some political solidarity or action that can be developed there.
No, I just think that actually like that is shown by the reactions of Germans saying like, okay, this is not our deal, you know, this is like nothing we ever encountered. Like we did our, we did our
racism. We
did our racism in World War II. That's why we don't talk about colonialism.
You had racism, critical mass, and then no more.
And like, if we would have looked into like colonialism, you know, and Germany's activity in colonial time, even though they were late to the party, you would have seen like a lot of methods that were later used. I mean, a lot of like medical testing, a lot of kind of, you know, race theory.
Yes,
that was written before Hitler wrote his Mein Kampf. A lot of the concentration camp method, etc., etc. Like a lot of that was used and tried out in the colonies. So
So on that note, I just wanted to. I think a few people have pointed this out. It is a quote from Frantz Fanon.
Sad podcast.
No, it's not about our podcast. It's about Frantz Fanon, the Martinique psychoanalyst, revolutionary. I first heard it on the radio show By Any Means Necessary, so I thought I'd shout them out in the U.S. But Fanon had a quote in The Wretched of the Earth, which he wrote as a revolutionary in Algeria with the FLN, which is all about uprising as a necessary form of understanding as orienting oneself towards politics and towards history. He said, quote, "When we revolt, it's not for a particular cause. We revolt simply because, for many reasons, we can no longer breathe."
Oh.
That's what he said in 1961 about the brutal war in Algeria, propagated by French colonial forces. And we've certainly heard that far too many times recently. I don't think this is going away anytime soon, and we will certainly be talking about it as long as we can. If anybody listening wants to send us any information about your country or something you might know, please, we're happy to talk about it on the show. We're happy to just send any information. Yeah. Something we messed up, please correct us.
If you have an idea for a guest from your country who could talk more about this.
Yeah. Other countries we didn't get to today, we'll probably talk about in the future. Mexico, Canada, Japan.
Oh, yeah.
There's so, like
the rest of Europe.
The Spain kind of operates the same as like all the like border states in the US when it comes to like drug trafficking. Like,
true. We didn't even mention Greece.
Yeah.
They threw Molotov cocktails at the fucking US embassy.
Yeah.
Actually, the opera.
The opera.
The embassy's next door.
All right.
Well,
and they were swinging at cops, I think.
I see.
Which, pimp move.
Yeah. So with that, I hope you guys catch us next week and stay tuned to the bonus on Patreon where hopefully maybe we can do something light and stupid to cheer people up.
Oh my God, please. This has been so much lately.
Yeah, really long day.
Yeah. All right. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.